You're listening to the Remote Millionaires Podcast, the show for aspiring and established entrepreneurs who want to create and scale six-figure success online without being chained to a job, location, or computer. I'm your host, Tom Gaddis. Let's dive in. Aloha and welcome to the Remote Millionaires Podcast. Scott Mizener, how's it going, man?
Good, Tom. Great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking time to come on and do the podcast. Now, where are you located?
Southeast of Pittsburgh, just about 20 minutes out.
Southeast of Pittsburgh. Okay. All right,
Pittsburgh,
awesome.
Pennsylvania, because there is a Pittsburgh out Midwest, Kansas or something like that. So.
Oh, really? Well, all right, that's good. I only know the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so we weren't in danger of me mistaking that. Awesome. Cool. Well, listen, I want you to kind of I know we've known each other for a while, right? And we actually had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out in Maui when you came there with your wife. And I know you've been doing this, the local marketing thing. You're branching into the digital side of things. But maybe you can tell listeners a little bit about your journey. Like, how did you get into this? What have you been doing? And then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I am a full-time high school teacher, and probably within about 5 years of teaching, I really was required to go back to school. And so I was trying to figure out something that I could go to school for that made sense for what I taught. I'm a technology industrial arts certified teacher. And so there was a program that caught my eye, and it was called multimedia. So I went and got my master's in multimedia, and that really got me into the whole internet thing, because I was kind of new, I'm kind of an older guy. So I remember when I used the internet for the first time back in like 95, something like that. So it just kind of made sense. I always gravitated to it. I always enjoyed working on computers, and I felt like it was a good fit for what I taught, but I kind of had in the back of my mind, maybe I could use this someday for other things. So, building websites and doing things with audio and video and different things like that just was part of that degree program. And that's when I had my mentor. He was a musician and had his own business for years. And he told me, he said, Scott, you need to start your own business. And I was like, I'm not really interested in starting my own business. And he said, no, he says, there's a lot of benefits to it, good tax benefits. He says, you'll thank me someday. So I thought about it and started my business, quote unquote, and mainly just it was word of mouth. And he had a lot of work for me, actually, because I teach graphic design. And so he was always asking me to create artwork for his albums, and then he would pass me off to other people. And so I got to create a lot of artwork for different musicians, no big name musicians, but smaller musicians. But it was always really cool to kind of see that, see the end product. But that kind of turned into, then logo design and websites and lots of print material that I was asked to design. And so I didn't really market my business very much. It was just more or less, it was kind of a hobby for me. And then I enjoyed, of course, getting paid, but it was just fun working on these projects and working with different types of business owners. And that kind of sparked my interest even more. And so I kind of fell into the whole online marketing landscape, came across the Bob Ross postcard system. And I kind of followed him in that group and a few other types of marketing things. Like I think I was looking at box toppers, maybe doing a box topper program, like a pizza box topper. And so I just finally took the plunge. I just said, well, I'm going to try this out. I think I have enough local contacts. I know enough local people. And tried my first postcard. It was it'll be about 8 years ago this coming fall. And I didn't really have any sales background. I just like talking to people and I like to design things. So I figured at least that part of it I could fulfill. I could design all the artwork myself. So I got my first one out in that October. And I think I did one more that year as well. And then that kind of started my postcard journey of trying to pump out these postcards every year. And I would do a few every year. I probably should look back and actually see how many I did, but it was probably, sometimes I would do up to 10 or 12 in a year. And then a couple years ago, that's when I really started to get it going, because I started selling out. It took me a while to kind of figure things out, but then I started selling out the entire year. So I'd sell in advance and just sell the whole year out, because I kind of went like, okay, I'm going to put a postcard out. I need a little bit of money. Let's just do it. And so I'd reach out to all the business owners that I knew and, scrounge up a new few ones and then put a postcard out. So eventually I thought, what, I think this needs to be a little bit more scheduled. And so I did, I think I did 21 and then 20. That was like back-to-back years, the last 2 years. And then of course I met you and got in the Offline Sharks probably 5 years ago. And I just kind of followed everything and here and there picked up different types of other jobs, other services. I've built websites, hosted them, done some maintenance on them, lots of graphic design and printing. I still do a lot of printing, and yeah, whatever comes my way. So, and then eventually found out about the Remote Millionaires and decided, hey, I think this might be something that I should look at full time, because at some point I'd like to step away from teaching, and I want to do something that I enjoy, and I really enjoy just working with people and having these projects to work on, and then seeing the end results of it helping their business. That's really fulfilling. So that's kind of in a nutshell, my walk through then to now, and how it's changed along the way.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that listeners will be a little stunned by is you've done all of it. So 21 postcards last year, 18 postcards. And I'll tell you guys what those postcards are here in a minute. The year before, you're doing the graphic design, you're also teaching, but you also have a huge family. How many kids do you have?
We're one short of a dozen.
So 11. So teaching, starting your own business, doing the family thing. And I see your posts on Facebook. I mean, I know you spend a lot of great quality time with your family. It's a beautiful family. And I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you manage all that here in a minute. But for listeners that may be going, like, what the heck is this postcard thing? I have no idea what that is. Like Scott said, the postcards are something I did as well. And kind of one of the things that we connected on. I actually have one behind me. I always have one within Argus Link. So if you're watching this on video, you can see kind of what they look like, but they're like a 9x12. I think Scott's are a little bigger. You have one there?
This is one of my smaller ones. It's blurring out there, but you can kind of see it. It's the same size, but yeah, I don't have the big 11x14 with me right now.
Yeah. So they're basically like a 9x12 jumbo kind of high gloss card. You have ad spaces on each side, and basically you just go around, you sell the ad spaces, and then you mail these cards out to 10,000 residents, or however many you want, but 10,000 is typically kind of a standard residence in the area, and the businesses pay you for that. And one of the nice things about it is, Scott actually does the graphic design himself, and he does graphic design for me for the cards I do and other people in our community. But if you don't do graphic design, you don't have to worry. Like, you can find people to do that. We don't actually do the printing. We outsource that. The post office takes care of the mailing through the Every Door Direct Mail program. So it's really, you don't need a lot of money to get it started. You can get clients pretty quickly, and you can lead into other services. Like Scott was saying, he does, it leads to other printing jobs, which, by the way, you don't do those printing jobs, right? You outsource those. So you're basically like a middleman for the printing. Yeah.
I don't have enough room in my schedule to do all the printing as well. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, I'm considered a print broker. I have some good relationships with some wholesale printers, and they fulfill a lot of those services. So yeah, and I have several of them, because I did yard signs the other day for somebody, and I have to use different printers for different things.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is one of the reasons that you kind of came into Remote Millionaires was you're looking to kind of expand the digital side and some of those other services, because you have this great client base, right? Like, you've got an existing agency, you have people that trust you, they know you, right? They paid you money to be on these mailers. So how can we use that client base and really scale and grow, and maybe do some other services that we can then outsource and deliver on? And what I think is a great story is, like, not very long after you got in the program, didn't you run into somebody who wanted to do pay-per-click?
Yeah, I did. A good friend of mine.
So I know you don't do pay-per-click, but you told him, yes, I can do pay-per-click. So were you a little scared at that moment when you're like, yeah, I think I can do it?
Yeah, half and half, because I am the kind of person that really likes to have everything thought out and figured out. And
Yeah.
I'm not like too much of a massive risk taker. But I have said yes to a lot of jobs without really knowing how to finish them. And I think that just comes with experience, that you just figure it out.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because I think so many people are scared of all that stuff. Like they want to know exactly how they're going to handle every situation, and they kind of drive themselves crazy. And I know I did this for myself. I drove myself crazy with all the what ifs and could be's, and what if that happens, and what if they say this, and what if they say that. And you're right. Like what I learned in my experience was a lot of what if they say this never happened, right? And the things that were the issues and the problems, like you just figure them out. And as you do that, you get more comfortable with just being able to figure things out. Like it's not as scary as you think it is, right?
Right.
Yeah. But now you're actually closed that deal, right? Are you doing PPC for this guy?
Yeah, it hasn't started yet, but yeah, I figured out the behind the scenes and what I need to do to make it happen. And he's although he's a good friend of mine, he's still been kind of like, wow, this is great. Like everything that I've done for him and how I've walked him through it. And they've thanked me multiple times. So yeah, it's been good. And I'm sure, like, I kind of rolled in hey, I've got a setup fee, but I'm not going to charge that. You're my friend, but throw my name out to 3 people and give me a good testimonial. And that's great. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. So trying to find ways to leverage the referrals is something I want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And plus it's probably been, it's been pretty nice. Like I know I've seen your communications back and forth with Nick and the Remote Millionaires in your Slack channel with about the PPC and all that stuff. So, has it helped having that kind of behind the scenes support from somebody who does that stuff to be able to answer questions and kind of point in that direction?
For sure. Yeah. Being a teacher and knowing how much I help my students, right? Because they ask me questions, and then when the light bulb clicks on and it's like you're able to help them, I realize how important that is to have someone just kind of there that you can throw your questions out to, even though sometimes they might be silly, or it's like, I don't know why I asked that question. I could have figured it out, but you just had a brain block. And so it's very nice to have such a big community that's so sharing. And you and Nick have always been super sharing, but then to have other people that are willing to jump in, and they have different expertise, right? So, because I've had people help me, and then I've had people in the group ask me about postcards, and I've been able to help them. And I think that's how it works. That's how you got to be able to help each other grow. And that's how that community works. So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is how it works. And, sometimes you just need somebody to you say what you're thinking, for them to just say, yeah, you're right on track, is like really what you need. Right. I know for us and our agency and our businesses, as we've grown, like you always have this feeling of that. Well, at least I do. I kind of always have this little thought that like everybody else knows something I don't. Right. And so like we're trying to figure things out, and we're like, God, we just don't think we're doing this the best way. And then come to find out, like, that's how everybody else does it. So you're like, oh, okay, so that is the way to do it. Right. Like, it's just nice to have that back and forth. Well, one thing I wanted to talk about, Scott, is like, because I mentioned earlier, you have a large family. You're doing the teaching thing. You've been doing this agency stuff on the side. You're putting out a lot of cards. You're doing a lot of things there. What's kind of, what are some tips you could give people that are maybe in that same situation, family, job, looking to get this thing going on the side so they can maybe leave? How do you kind of balance all that? Or I don't know if balance is the right word. How do you manage all that, really? Right. How do you manage all that and get so much done?
Well, I will say it gets done very imperfectly. There's not a perfect science. Even people ask me all the time, like, wow, you have a huge family. Like, how do you do that? I could never do that. I only have 3. And I'm like, well, once you're outnumbered, it doesn't matter. And I don't have 11 2-year-olds running around. I have, a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, and like lots of kids. Like my 7-year-old changes a diaper. So, and I think what you have to realize is just take a step back, and it just doesn't have to be perfect. Not everything has to be perfect. And a lot of people get stuck with trying to even get started because they feel like they have to have everything perfect and everything's got it. It's not that way. You're just going to be changing and adjusting all the time. So, I mean, as far as managing, I would just say probably at this point, I'm pretty used to it, just because I am used to having like craziness all the time. And that's just how life is for us. I'm sure everybody else is crazy. Their lives are crazy and busy too. But you just kind of set aside time, the time necessary to be able to do certain things. And I've got a wonderful wife who understands that there are moments and stretches where I have to do certain things to be able to get, the postcard done, or the sales to get done, or the design. So, having my wife on board and kind of being my partner and kind of my teammate and encouraging me would be a lot more difficult if she wasn't. And then I get my kids involved too. Not all the time, but I try to get them involved. So as far as managing, I think to me, it's a lot like we're our own worst enemy. And we kind of get down on ourselves and then we just struggle with the day-to-day things. And then the business stuff kind of gets pushed to the side. And I do the same thing. I'm certainly not, I'm at fault all the time, where you just have to consistently keep doing it. Like, it's like, you just can't stop. Because if you give up, then you're going to look back and be like, oh, I didn't do that. And sometimes it's okay to fall flat on your face and it not work out, but you just can't stop doing it. And that's what I found is I just don't give up. Like, so, when I'm doing sales and they're not going very well, it's like, man, this is a tough week. I haven't been able to sell very many ads. And then you kind of want to just throw your hands up in the air, like, well, I might have to cancel this one. Well, I think I've only done that. I've never canceled. I've only delayed a couple times. And I think I get to a point and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep pushing forward. And then the next day I sell like 3 or 4 ads right in a row. Mm-hmm. And it just shows that you just got to catch people at the right time because their schedules are really busy, and just realize that that's life, and be yourself, be real, and just keep consistently and persistently reaching back out to people, reaching back out and understanding whenever they don't get back to you, don't take it personally, and just be used to, hey, no, it's not going to work this time, or maybe catch me the next time around. And that's just part of sales. Now it gets old. So that's why I want to do something a little bit more recurring versus sales all the time. But that's just hopefully a couple hints on what I do to kind of get through managing everything in life. Because there's definitely moments where it's overwhelming. I'm taking a break from postcards right now, mainly to focus on my marketing business. And that's been very nice to be able to just take a step back. But then I've got all these business owners contacting me and saying, when are you doing postcards again? Because those work so well. And you're like, oh man, because that's pretty good profit every time you do it. But it's just one of those things. You need to take some time off when you need to. And then I'm going to get back at it again, most likely a little bit smaller this time, and keep focusing on the marketing side of things, because that's kind of the goal, is to be able to step back away from teaching at some point and do this full time.
Yeah, I think it's so on point what you said there about you just keep going, right? And the consistency, even if it's like, even if your life is so busy that you can only devote 30 minutes a week to moving forward on this thing that you're trying to do, then just spend that 30 minutes a week, right? And just keep doing it. And some days when you don't feel like doing it, like, don't beat yourself up, just pick up and keep going. It's like, you never know where that tipping point is, right? I mean, I personally, for years and years and years, struggled and couldn't get any traction and couldn't get anything going, but just kept like, okay, well, I'll try this thing. Okay, I'll try that thing. And like, well, that didn't work. Well, let's try this. And then one day it just started to all kind of click into place and things started to happen. And I think that's a pretty common experience among successful people, because they just don't quit, right? You just keep going no matter what.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Scott, what advice would you give to somebody out there who's maybe, again, in that same similar situation, right? Maybe they're working a job, they want to get this side thing going. What advice would you give them to put them on the right track to get something moving?
Well, I think we all fall into the same trap of like following every shiny object that comes across our path. So I think that's something for sure that I would suggest to somebody is, listen, there is so many different options out there, right? There is so many things to sell. There's so many services to offer. And don't get caught up in all those different things that there is available. Try to pick one thing that you have an interest in, that you might feel comfortable kind of diving into, and just focus on that one thing. And that's it. Because if you can focus on one thing and just kind of put, your heart into it and organize it and get it all ready to go, and then, give it some really good, solid effort. What I found is if I'm like started to go scatterbrained, like, oh, I got to do this, and then this distracts me, and then I got this. Before you know it, you've lost focus on that one thing that you need to do. So one task at a time. And I think the postcards are perfect to get into as far as business wise, because it's such a simple thing to sell. It's not complicated. Like, you don't have to know what SEO is and pay-per-click and all the algorithm, all these things that most business owners are going to lose you anyways. They understand direct mail. It's such a simple thing to get started. If you're interested in getting into any sort of marketing, it's a simple thing to sell because it's very basic. And then there's other things too. There's other things that you could pick out, like, maybe even just social media posting. Like, that's a pretty simple thing to do. Or maybe managing someone's Google My Business, or, something that you feel comfortable doing that you could learn a little bit about, and then just focus on that one thing. And then after you got that one service down, if you plan on expanding, then add the second one in, add the third one in. But don't go like, yeah, I'm going to offer these 10 services and be an expert in all 10. You're going to throw in the towel at some point. So like you said, don't give up on that one thing. And then after you get that experience, right, then you're like, oh, I get that. I know how to do that. And all that experience then carries over into the next thing that you want to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And you're right about keeping it simple and starting small. Like, I see so many people that are like, yeah, I'm going to offer 5 services, and they pick the most complicated things. And you're like, well, how many clients have you had? Well, I've never had a client. It's like, well, how about we do something a little easier? Let's get some confidence and some traction, right? And get that in place first, and then move on to that stuff. So yeah, awesome words of wisdom. Well, Scott, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Tom. It's always good to chat with you. And just because I always know where you got started with postcards, it always gives me hope that someday, I can wear that shirt that says "Be like Tom," because I might make it at some point.
No, man, like, you have far surpassed me when it comes to the postcards. It's amazing to watch what you're doing. And I love the dedication, and I'm excited to have you in RM and see how you grow outside of that. You have such a great base there, such a good foundation to build on, that I think results and scalability and all that stuff are going to come pretty quickly. So I'm excited to see that. Appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed listening to this episode with Scott and myself, please go to wherever you listen to this podcast, leave us a review. We'd love it. Also, you can go to remotemillionaires.com/podcast. You'll find notes from this episode, any links, stuff like that. I'll put those on the page there. Thanks again. Stay safe out there. And I will see you next week on another episode of the Remote Millionaires Podcast. Aloha, everybody. Hey, if what you've heard today on the Remote Millionaires Podcast resonates with you and you want to continue the conversation, then I want to personally invite you to head over to remotemillionaires.com and schedule your free Remote Millionaires business development call. We will analyze your business and show you exactly how to accelerate your results and build a wildly successful business you can run from anywhere. Until next time, Tom Gaddis, signing off.